Hello, good evening and welcome to your award-winning business and economic analysis show live here on TV3 Business Focus. My name is Parkus Yasari and it's a delight to join you again for another week of economic and business analysis. So what are we looking at this week? The Ghana Economic Forum, 2017 Ghana Economic Forum has just been launched in Accra. Our Senior Minister Yao Osafo-Mampho has been making some remarks. The theme for this year's Economic Forum is building a Ghanaian-owned economy. We'll bring you some excerpts from that launch and also do some analysis on the back of remarks made by Senior Minister Yao Osafo-Mampho. The Central Bank has just made an announcement of a new deputy governor. This follows the retirement of first deputy governor, Mr. Dr. Millicent Nah, who recently retired from the Central Bank. And so the bank has just made the announcement of a replacement. He comes in as second deputy governor, beg your pardon. And so we'll be talking about that shortly. And so there's many other issues we'll be talking about, plus analysis of the commodities market as well as the stock market. We'll find out the price of gold, cocoa and oil and how it's likely to impact on the local economy. So we've got this and many more coming up in the next 50 minutes. My name is Parkus Yasari. We'll return with our mover segment. Hello, good evening and welcome to your favorite program, the Mover Segment, live here on TV3. Tonight we're inside Nkrumah Flats and I'm going to be speaking to a young man who is making a lot of difference in his society, supporting people and creating jobs around him. I'm talking about the Chief Executive Officer of Awimbora Spicy Kebab. His name is Jacob Awimbora. Jacob, it's good to be in your office. Thanks very much for inviting us here.
Thank you.
Great. So Jacob, tell us a bit about yourself.
Jacob Awimbora, coming from Upper East Trading, Bongo District. When I came to Accra, 1990, when I was young. I started this work with my uncle at Kolebu, opposite maternity. I worked with him a while, then I start see that there's a difference, I can prove myself. And I opened this place, that's year 2000.
In 2000 you opened this place. Yes, why did you decide to open your own place?
Because of this place, I was coming to open my own branch because I see that I'm now growing and I have to get married, I have to get my own life. So I see that I can't be with my uncle a very long time. In the same time, I experienced that this work, I can do it and benefit it from this job. I can make life on it.
Right. How much money did you need to set up this place?
This place I started to set up, it's not big money. I started it, this guest single table and a report and guest single sieve from the starting. And
you were doing this all by yourself, alone?
For the starting, I do it by myself. Taking like 1 year and I start to employ people.
So how many workers do you have now?
I have workers, we have 8 workers or 9 workers now.
About 8 to 9 workers?
Yeah.
And do you have only this branch? You've got branches scattered across?
Thank you. I have branches across.
How many branches?
4 branches. I have one Achimota, Jerusalem. I have one Kolebu, Agenda. I have one Akko Johnson. And I have one Ladi Place, that's Mataiko. And I have one Atiko Johnson.
So these are essentially your workers here at the headquarters. This is the headquarters of your kebab company. Now, do you pay them monthly?
Thank you. I pay them daily.
Daily?
Thank you.
And what gets them excited? What gets them working for you?
No, because of the payment, they see that it's good and they see that this work, we can help ourselves.
I see. So you've been doing this since 2000.
Yeah.
Tell me about the kebab business in Ghana. Does it sell? Is it profitable?
Thank you very much. The kebab business is good. It depends it depends the location, the area you are, and depends how you do it.
How do you do it?
If you do it quality, you get customers.
Now, I need to ask you this question because we've got lots of kebab sellers across the country, lots of them. What makes you stand out?
You know, this business, I always serious on it. I always buy the business all the time. I deal with the fire all the time. I talk with the customers. And in the same time, you have to calm down with the customer. Any customer is right for having any different talking to you. I experience Ghanaians, sometimes they don't want, you know, you to prove yourself too much. Be down with them. No matter what business you are.
You've got to be humble.
Just be humble. Thank you very much. Just be humble to them.
I see. So where do you get your meat from, the kebab? Where do you get them from? You've got...
The kebab, the meat, I buy the goat lively, then I slaughter them, then I bring it every day.
I see.
Yeah.
And what do people say about your kebab? What do they tell you? What feedback do you get from them?
Thank you very much. This course is good. Everybody say my kebab is the whole world.
The whole world?
The whole world.
Whoa.
Anybody who take my kebab, he was telling me different stories.
Wow.
Goat meat, the guinea fowl, everybody happy to eat.
Wow.
Yeah. So sometimes people call me office, you know, anywhere.
So tell me about your supply chain. So you supply to companies, for parties, for weddings. Tell me about that.
Yes, I supply to companies, supply to weddings, school fan fairs, school vacations, funerals, you know, any program.
Wow.
Any
and
program.
You're able to meet up the demand?
Thank you. I do everything.
How many do you sell in a day? How many sticks of kebab do you sell in a day?
The kebab, for the weekdays, it's normal. You can say weekdays, you can sell about 300, 400 to 500 sticks.
300, 400, it's normal for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the weekends, you know, you can be more than that.
Like how many?
It can be like 700. If
700 sticks a day?
Yeah.
How much do you sell a stick of kebab?
A stick is 3 cedis for one.
That's too much.
And
no, but that's too much.
It's not too much. The liver
kebab used to be 1 cedi. Kebab used to be 1 cedi.
It's not 1 cedi, it's 3 cedis because of the quality meat we have here, because of the quality animals we slaughter, because of the guinea fowl, the better guinea fowl. Here we don't sell fake guinea fowl. Here it's live guinea fowl. Sometimes we bring it in the cage. If you come, you choose it, then we slaughter it for you.
So you're able to make about, an average of 900,000 cedis in a day?
Thank you.
In a single day?
Yes, please. If that's weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what's the future of your business? What are you looking at doing in the near future? You want to open more outlets? You want to open more branches? You want to employ more people?
Yes, I would like to open more. And at the same time, it's not only this business I focus for in future. I'm thinking different other things.
What else do you want to do?
That one, I have to get a target before. I have to target something to do. And I don't want to voice it outside now.
Jacob, tell me about the challenges you face in this business on a regular basis. You've been doing this since 2000. I mean, you've had your own shop since 2000. What challenges do you face on a daily basis?
Thank you very much. You know, this business, or any business, there's a challenges inside. There's a lot of enemies. And sometimes just be focused what you are thinking to do. Don't think of other people. Maybe they think of you, or they try to, to bring negative to cross you. No, I don't have that kind of station for myself. I always focus to what I'm doing. And I've been seeing distinct challenges in my life, but I always pray God that everything's to go away.
Do you keep records? Do you have books that you keep records in?
Yes, please.
You've got books that you keep records?
Yeah.
A lot of people worry about the environment within which your people operate. Do you have standards that you operate with? Have you got certification?
Yes, boss. I have certificate. I have certificate qualified for selling food. I have AMA. Even you can see one here. Actually, the certificate can to acquire this place that you are safe to sell kebab. Yes, I have certificate. My company is registered.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they come by regularly to inspect?
Yes. Every month we have to come and inspect. And this certificate is renewed every year.
Every year?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So next year by this time, I want to visit Awimbora. What would I see differently? Or let's say in the next 5 years, what will be different about Awimbora spicy kebabs?
Next year or next 5 years this time, what I'm thinking or what I'm focused is maybe you'll be coming, maybe I won't be here safe, but you'll come, it will be bigger more than this. And I'll be different level. That's what I'm focused.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Jacob Awimbora, the Chief Executive Officer of Awimbora Spicy Kebab. He's been our guest on the Mover segments right here on TV3. My name is Parkwesi Asare. Thanks very much for watching. We're going to go back to the studios. Hopefully next week we'll come your way with yet another edition of your favorite program, the Mover segment. All right, so welcome back to your award-winning show, your business and economic analysis program, Business Focus, live here on TV3. So gone by is your Mover segment, and we spoke to the Chief Executive Officer of Awimbora Spicy Kebab, Jacob Awimbora. I'm sure his story inspires you a lot. So if you've got any business idea you want to follow up on, please do, because you may never know what the future holds for you. So let me welcome you back into the studios. My name is Parkwesi Asare. So next, we're going to be talking about the Ghana Economic Forum 2017, which is on the theme Building a Ghanaian-Owned Economy. It was launched today, and Senior Minister Yaw Osafo-Maakufo has been making a number of remarks, making a strong case for public officials who mismanage the economy to be punished. Speaking of the 2017 Ghana Economic Forum, he noted the fiscal responsibility law will promote accountability and engender the country's development. We'll go for a soundbite from that program, and then I'll come in studio, introduce my guests to you, and then we'll start the discussion.
Infrastructure development. And here, power becomes perhaps the most critical of the infrastructure development. You cannot run an economy without adequate source of power. The economy's blood flow is power. Every other thing depends on power. Doing so, perhaps, was the main source of the destruction of this economy. For 4 years of doing so created a problem for industry, agriculture, and the economy as a whole. We should now be sure that we have enough energy. And we are planning not only to have enough, but to have excess, so that in the event of certain problems, industry, agriculture will never run short of energy. Luckily, Ghana has a lot of gas deposit. And when you are blessed with gas, then you are halfway the solution to your energy. Let us think about future generations. This generation should lay forever a foundation that will make Ghana the center of industry in West Africa. Let us resolve to get the economy resolved once and for all. Let us remove this tag of irreversibility on our head, that Ghana will do well for some time, and then later we reverse to the bottom, and then we climb again to the top. That cannot do. Once we set on motion and moving, we should make it impossible for any government to reverse the motion. And therefore, certain laws should even be looked at as part of managing the economy. That's why we are looking at the fiscal responsibility law. So you can't come and run the deficit anyhow. There should be a law restricting you between a band. And we are looking at 3.5 to 5% deficit annual. So the Minister of Finance will be responsible. And people should suffer for breaking such economic rules. We have the Bank of Ghana Act, which says that the government should not spend more than 10% in excess of the previous year's revenue. This is a law in Ghana. That's the Banking Act. The government spends 42% above the previous year's revenue and nothing happens. The governor continues to hold his job. You go to Argentina, you will leave immediately. Because we can't have the law there which restricts you to control expenditure. You do it anyhow, push the whole country into a mess, and enjoy your position as governor. It's high time we look at some of these things and make sure that people who break our own agreed laws suffer for it. Distinguished captains of industry, distinguished banks, we are in difficulty, but we can easily overcome. A forum of this type is very important because it allows us to think outside the box, to discuss problems among ourselves, to support each other, to ensure that Ghana gets on the development path now and forever.
All right, so you have the senior minister, I beg your pardon, Yao Osafo for speaking at the Ghana 2017 Economic Forum. Did I hear my producer right? Do we have another clip from that event? Okay. All right. So I'm going to come in studio and introduce my guest to you. We've got Ben Amoaje. He's an analyst with First Bank Financial Services. Ben, good to have you in the studio. And also Edu Owusu-Sarkodie, an economist with the University of Ghana. My two paddies. Great guys. Charlie, good to have you guys in the studio. So the finance minister, why do I keep saying finance minister? The senior minister has been talking tough. He says we need to remove this tag of irreversibility. We've got to have a sustained economic growth. We need to be on the path of growth and recovery. We can't seem to be making strides and then be falling back. How do we do this? He talks about the fiscal responsibility law, which government is championing. He gives a classic example of countries like Argentina, for instance, where you have ministers spending above the budget limit, and they get fired for that. In our part of the world, it does not happen. How do we get this done? Let me introduce my guest to you one more time, Sarkodie and Ben. Ben, I'll start off with you. What is this whole business about irreversibility?
I think the point has been that this is not. I think if you would remember very well, between 2010 and 2012, Ghana was touted as, should I say, the star of Africa, or the rising star among all the emerging market economies across the world.
Indeed, one of the major topics on the BBC, CNN, on the lips of everybody was Africa Rising.
Africa Rising, and Ghana was like the star amongst all the other nations, along with Botswana and Kenya and some other nations. Unfortunately, we dropped off significantly from where we were. And that's been a recurring event. If you look at since the economy was liberalized in the 1980s, we grow very quickly, we become like the star of Africa, and then suddenly we are having troubles. Then we grow very quickly again, then we have trouble. So I think that was what the senior minister was alluding to, the fact that suddenly we are like, it's like we're on top of the world, and then all of a sudden, before anybody realizes, it's like we are struggling all of a sudden, and nobody is really sure what went wrong.
Once upon a time, we're told we're a middle
income
economy, and the argument was that, we were expanding, and so we could borrow more.
Exactly.
That's what has brought us here today.
I think you see, the fact that we could borrow more was also partly premised on the fact that we had discovered oil and had started exploring oil in commercial quantities. That was from 2011. The problem with that situation was that in mid-2014, oil prices more than halved from the $110 per barrel we're seeing. So suddenly all the oil receipts that we were expecting to boost our economy and to support our borrowing was non-existent. In addition to that, like the senior minister alluded to, again, there was the Dumsor issue, which made industry and the industry, especially manufacturing, also suffer as well. And so it wasn't just one event. It was a cocktail of things that brought us to where we are now. But I think the problem has always been that somebody didn't do their job well at some point. And there's an example. For the energy, for instance, I think you'll also remember that when the Dumsor started, very quickly the government was able to improve our production, or how do you call it, power generation. And you're wondering why that wasn't done prior to us entering that very serious phase of Dumsor, where companies had to collapse, jobs had to be laid off. Take the oil prices, for instance. I think for several economies, they could foresee where the oil prices were going to go, because it was becoming very obvious that China was slowing down. And because China was the biggest oil consumer at that point in time, if China slows down, oil prices would suffer a decline. And so any country that was exporting oil at that time, or that was dependent on oil at that time, should have known what was coming and should have taken measures to avert the problem that some of the economies like ours and Nigeria did. Nobody did that.
Right. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie, is this indicative of the situation we find ourselves in today, especially during the budget review recently done by the finance minister. Our growth targets for 2016 were lower than we had earlier anticipated. Our fiscal deficit targets were higher than we had earlier anticipated. Indeed, our debt to GDP ratio was higher than we had earlier anticipated. Is this a sign of what he's talking about?
Yes, PK, in as much as we want to look at economic variables, I think that all these happenings have some political underpinning. If you look at history from Dr. Nkrumah, the first president, you look at up to now, the twist that we've had, the fluctuations in the macroeconomic variables have always have their own economic, political twist. How many times haven't we gone to the IMF since independence? Several times. We go seek the help from IMF, we mess up, we go again, we mess up, and we go back to them, we mess up. How many times? So,
well, all this time we only went for policy credibility. That's all we went for this time.
But it's still going to them.
Last time, the current one went for policy credibility.
Yeah.
And you borrowed at what rate? We borrowed at a very high interest rate. The political will, I think that economists in this country have done a fantastic job. Our job is to research, write reports, recommend to the politician. If the politician does not discipline himself and overspend, like you said, you set a target of 5%, by middle of the year, you had already exceeded your target. You overspend. Every election year, except 2004, every election year, we overspend. So it is more of political economy than pure economics. The other indicators are, just being controlled by political power. Because, like I said, the economists can only recommend. It is the politician who implements what has been recommended, who implements the findings of the research. That you really put across. You set a target of, it's about 5%, 6%, you end up with 3%. What has gone wrong? In the same period, you've raised the public debt by more than 100 billion cedis, telling us that you invested in infrastructure. Meanwhile, this infrastructure that you invested in, at the same time, the growth rate of industry was declining. The GDP growth rate was declining in the same period.
Interest payments,
interest payment going up. The capital expenditure as a ratio of GDP going down in the same period that you are saying that you are investing in infrastructure.
Okay, so we know about all these problems. We've talked about this time and again. And the senior minister attempts a solution to this seeming crisis. He's saying, let's go for the fiscal responsibility law. Essentially, what we're saying is that let's give a target to the Bank of Ghana governor that, listen, there's a band of between 3.5 to 5%. You don't go above that. If you do, you're fired for that. Is that the way, Ben?
I think it is not wrong. We would all agree with that. Who will fire him though? That's the problem. You and I do not have the power to do that. The same person who appointed him is the only person who can fire him. If the person who appointed him decides, oh, it's not such a big deal, let's keep him there, what can you and I do?
But
that's always the
we've
problem.
been told that in times past, Governor Paul Akwa was quite notorious for bouncing government checks, and he was quite strict on his work.
That is what you need. You see, the problem with Ghana is that sometimes, so we always have to depend on someone in power being the right person in power, or someone with authority being the right person in authority. The problem with that is, if at any point in time you find, I don't know how to put it, but somebody who is not so responsible in there, it creates a problem. That shouldn't be. The way it should be is that there should be a system, so that irrespective of who is in power, whether that person is responsible or irresponsible, the system is a check on that person. Now, if the president is the only person who can fire the finance minister, and at some point in time decides that he doesn't want to fire the finance minister, even though he's broken the fiscal responsibility law, then really there's nothing to do about it.
But I'm going to ask you to hold on for me. Let me get on the phone lines and speak to economist with the University of Cape Coast, Dr. John Gachi. Doc, thank you very much for your time. So we just listened to the voice of Senior Minister Yao Osafo-Maafo talking at the launch of the Ghana 2017 Economic Forum. where he talked about, Ghana being given the tag of irreversibility, an economy that appears to be doing well at some point in time and seems to, be making downward gains, and all this have happened, within our 60 or 50-year history. He says, listen, the way forward is to adopt the fiscal responsibility law, where we give ourselves a target. We give the Bank of Ghana governor a target, a band of between 3.5 to 5%, so that if we happen to spend above that target, he's fired for his job. Is that the way to go? Hello, Dr. Gachi, can you hear me? Hello? Hello, Dr. Gachi, can you hear me on the phone lines? I'm afraid we don't have him. Ben, you're making a point.
Yes, so the whole point is that it's a good law, but we've had laws like he himself made an example of with the Bank of Ghana issue, where they are not supposed to provide financing in excess of 10% to the previous year's revenues. Who obeys those laws?
No, but we were told last year, for instance, in the election, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, which is good. But honestly, I believe that is because of the IMF. It isn't because of the central bank's own decision not to do so. And it had been broken sometimes in the past without any repercussions for either the governor or the Minister of Finance. And I don't think Parliament even called them to Parliament. Parliament even invited them to explain it. So the law can be there, but if nobody is taking action or implementing whatever the law says should be done, then really it's like, Ghana, we have all the right laws. The problem is implementation of those laws.
All right, let me get back on the phone lines. I'm told Dr. Gachi is on the phone lines. Thank you, Dr. Gachi, for your time. I was asking what you make of the fiscal responsibility law, which is being championed by government as a way of checking the excesses in government spending.
Well, I think fiscal responsibility law is good. One thing we need to put in mind is that all the things that fiscal responsibility law seeks to do are already captured in our existing laws. If you take public financial management law, it is the responsibility of the finance manager or finance minister to ensure that it monitors and takes oversight responsibility over the finances of this country. So I do not know what the fiscal responsibility law is going to do beyond the commitment of the managers of the economy to ensure that they discipline themselves and do things in line with the aspiration of the desire of the people of Ghana. So I think much lies with the managers of the economy. It is not merely about the law. So if you take the Bank of Ghana Act, we're supposed to borrow from the central bank not more than 10% of previous year's revenue. But until the law was changed to 5%, all the government that came into existence were all flouting these laws. So what is the guarantee that when you bring fiscal responsibility law and there's pressure on you across the board, you are going to discipline yourself? So much of the work will actually have to be done by the managers of the economy.
So for you, it's not just about playing with words, it's not just about semantics, but it's about ensuring that the right things are done. And you've said that in the past, most of the governors have actually flouted this law. But I need to find out from you, why are we able to have, these kind of things done in advanced countries? And the senior minister made mention of Argentina, for instance, where ministers are fired if they go contrary to the rules. Why can't we have the same thing being replicated here?
That's why I say it is all about the commitment of those who we have voted to manage the economy for us. And I think the law ought to be very clear. I do not understand why you are going to fire the Bank of Ghana governor when the executive put pressure on the Bank of Ghana governor to do what it's not supposed to do. So all the expenditure that we are talking about, GIFMIC is supposed to stop some of the expenditure excesses beyond budget or expenditure which are not captured by the budget. GIFMIC system, when the finance minister is doing his work effectively, he is supposed to ensure that those things are done. Beyond that, it is the executive that put pressure on the economy by borrowing excessively. It is the executive that put pressure on people that they have appointed to manage some institutions to do things that they are not supposed to do. So if the target is supposed to be the Bank of Ghana governor, What about the government in place? What is the law going to do to them in terms of punishment? So I think these are the things that make the implementation of laws very difficult.
Dr. Gachi, with all the challenges that you quite eloquently talk about, are we ever going to be able to realize a sustained economic growth? Because the minister, again, is worried about the tag of irreversibility that appears to be on Ghana, that at some point in time we have sustained economic growth, at other points in time we have growth just tumbling. You know, will this ever happen in our lifetime?
Well, it all depends on how we discipline ourselves, because some of the things that do happen to us, they are things that we have control over. So if we discipline ourselves, we design the roadmap for ourselves, and we want to adhere to them, we can achieve sustainable growth over a long period of time.
Okay, let me try and make this a bit. Let me try and make this a bit. Doc, hold on. Let me try and make this a bit practical. So, assuming Dr. Gachi, you were quite abreast with a lot of the issues when it comes to economic management. Assuming you were made governor of the Bank of Ghana tomorrow, what would you do, for instance, to ensure that we keep to our spending limits?
Well, I think the rules are there. The governor of Bank of Ghana currently is supposed to ensure stable prices in terms of inflation, in terms of interest rates. That is the job of the Bank of Ghana governor. The law allows that if central government wants to borrow through the Bank of Ghana, it's not supposed to be more than 5% of previous year's revenue. So those are the things that the governor must ensure that he does. But fiscal management affects monetary policy management. So if the government goes to borrow excessively, if the government engages in excessive expenditure, those things will undermine monetary policy management. It is not the weakness of the central governor, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, but it is the activity of the executive that is having negative influence on the activities of the Bank of Ghana. So these are the things that we need to actually appreciate. While the Bank of Ghana is doing everything possible, we have been reading their report. They are very clear in what they are doing, but it is the executive that creates problems for this institution to function effectively.
Dr. Gachi, I've got to say a big thank you to you. We appreciate your enlightenment on this subject. Dr. Gachi is a chartered economist with the University of Cape Coast, helping us on the phone lines to do some analysis on the back of the suggestion by the Senior Minister, Yaosafo Manfo, for a fiscal responsibility law. Ben, I'll come back to you, picking from Dr. Gachi's words about the pressure that's been mounted, continually on the central bank. We talk about the autonomy of the central bank, yet the executive wants to appoint the central bank governor. Are we kidding ourselves?
You see, it's not a problem in and of itself. I mean, even in the UK, the governor of the central bank has to submit himself to parliament. So it's not really outside of the ambit of the government to do that. The problem is after you've appointed him, allow him to do his work. And I think Dr. Gachi makes a good point about how are you going to sack the guy when you are the reason why he probably did what he did. So every time that the finance minister is irresponsible with our finances, every time the Bank of Ghana overfinances the government's budget, it is because the government is the beneficiary of that action.
But
so you can't expect the president.
But as governor, if he's not allowing you to do your work, just resign.
That is what that is what sounds nice in our ear, honestly. But I don't know how many of us would. Is it
too difficult to do?
I honestly, I don't think all of us would have the, should I say, the boldness to actually just come out and say, I'm tired, these people are giving me pressure, so I've stopped, I'm going home. I think we come from a culture where we are told to take things easy and, that kind of thing. So if you behave like that, it's like you are being abrupt or being too brash. And sometimes I think the issue is that some of them feel they can manage the situation. And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's take Mr. Setekpe, for instance. Over the 3 years between 2013 that he was sworn in, or as finance minister, in 2015, excellent job in keeping our finances in shape. And then in 2016, nobody knows what happened. And we even had areas that didn't even appear in the Ministry of Finance figures. So that's always a problem. We always have to depend on good people being in there and doing the right thing. But we can't live our lives like that. We need the system to work, irrespective of who is in power.
And I'm sorry, Sakure, that's why I asked the question, is it ever going to happen in my lifetime or in your lifetime where we have sustained period of economic growth?
Yes, it's very possible. We just have to encourage political commitment, and everything will be fine.
As simple as that?
Yes, it's as simple as that. Look, the economist mentioned the fact that we should allow the institutions to work, and I agree with him. If you set a target, allow the institutions to work. There's too much power in the hands of the executive. I think that from the start, we should do a constitutional review and reduce some of the powers of the executive. If we want a sustained economic development, if we want it to be done by the institutions that have been assigned these duties, then we must reduce the powers of the executive, decentralize the powers, give some of the powers to the institutions, allow the institutions to work. I'll give you two scenarios. In one country, the president asked the governor to give him money. The governor says no. He says print money. He says he can't print money. It will cause inflation. He fires the governor. In another scenario, he says, I want money. The governor says, I don't have money unless you apply for overdraft. So you see, the governor in scenario 2 was able to advise the executive, and the executive bought that advice. They applied for overdraft. If you have a bank, we have the commercial banks around, you have a bank. You cannot spend beyond the amount of money you have in your account. So what do you have to do? Apply for overdraft. The central bank is the bank for the government. If you don't have money and you want to overspend, apply for overdraft. You see, if you're able to keep our institutions in shape, let the institutions work, I think that we are going to see some this. We set a target. Now there's going to be a fiscal responsibility law, fiscal something law. We have the Public Finance Management Act. How far did we go with the Public Finance Management Act or law? Now we want to have this law. We can have as many laws as possible. But if you do not prosecute somebody for embezzling funds, if you do not prosecute somebody for going beyond the target, if you don't prosecute somebody, we have the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. Every now and then people come to sit on TV, GTV, showing to the country. People come and sit down. The auditor's report is read. You are asked, how about this 2 million? How about this 10,000? I know of some of your colleagues, journalists from Adum FM or so. They went on the street, right? And then they told government that Ghana want their money. What has been done? People have taken public funds. We haven't seen any action. So the political commitment
I'm sorry,
is what you are not seeing.
I don't want to sound cynical, but who's going to prosecute Ken Ofori-Atta?
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, who's going to do that? For overspending.
This question can be answered in the UK, isn't it?
And it can.
Yes, because the institutions are working there.
It can work in the UK because the institutions are working there. Because Parliament will have the right to call him. And you find people who are even in government or people whose party are in government calling for his head, even though they are in his government. That will not happen in this country. There's no way Ofori-Atta will overrun the budget and the president will sack him. No. If somebody manages to call him to Parliament, we all know for sure that as long as the MPP holds a majority in Parliament, he will keep his head. And that's where the problem comes in. We have to, get rid of
So why are we doing this to ourselves?
Auditor's report.
Why are we doing this to ourselves?
We have the judiciary.
Exactly. And you see, and for some of these things, unfortunately, the power to prosecute also lies within the ambit of the government. There are some of these cases that, for instance, if you're a CSO and you bring it up to the court will tell you don't have the jurisdiction to do so. Because there are particular individuals who have been given the power by the Constitution to prosecute some of these matters. And so really the problem is, so like I said, we always count on Ofori-Atta, for instance, being finance minister and doing the right thing. In case he decides not to do the right thing, everybody knows nothing is going to happen.
We're left at the benevolence or otherwise of public officials.
Which comes back to what Mr. Sakure was saying. Let's take the powers away from them. The executive has too much power. The same person who appoints him, is the only person who can fire him. Unfortunately, this same person is the only one who will benefit if the finance minister actually overruns the budget. So why would he sack him?
So government is, there's also the Fiscal Council that's been set up to ensure that, we check spending and all that. How's that also going to work out?
It comes back to the same thing. Really, the power of the Fiscal Council, at least from what I got from the budget, the better reading is that they are going to be doing basically the same thing as something like what the Finance Committee in Parliament has been doing. You understand? And really, it is no difference. We've had these committees running for like during the course of this Fourth Republic, and what have they been able to do about checking the financing deficits? It still comes back to the same thing. Let's get the institutions themselves to work, and let's not count on some 1 or 2 individuals doing the right thing. Is the Fiscal Council going to be given the power, for instance, to start prosecution against any individual who overruns the budget as finance minister? And who is going to appoint the finance council? The Fiscal Council. If they are all going to be the president's appointees, are we sure they are going to prosecute or call for the prosecution of the finance minister if he flouts the financial responsibility law? You see, so it comes back. It's like a circle. We can talk about it all day, but
we'll come on to. All right, so let's quickly wrap up. Are we beginning to see signs of spending within limits? Most people are complaining that they haven't seen government, undertake a lot of spending this year.
Well, you could say that. They had a deficit target of 2.5% for the half year.
Yeah.
They did 1.5. So that was very good. And they've even reviewed the deficit target for the whole year downwards from 6.5 to 6.3. So that's very good. Like, I mean, it shows it's a government or a finance minister that is very serious about checking the fiscal overruns. So it's good. But then again, this is their first year in government. I'm a bit skeptical. Let's see what happens over the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, I'm not so much enthused about getting the target, the fiscal deficit, because the fiscal deficit alone is not the question. Because if you can sacrifice your expenditure to keep the fiscal deficit at a lower rate. If you sacrifice your expenditure, you are sacrificing so many, priority expenditure, like going into education, going into health. All we need to do is to raise domestic revenue.
All we need to do
is to raise domestic revenue.
You've got the magic to turn around the fortunes of this economy.
But you asked a question about the budget deficit. And a budget deficit is the difference between revenue and expenditure. If you want to keep your deficit, you don't bring down expenditure, you raise your revenue, and that's the ideal way to go. We're always thinking of the demand side. We should be thinking of the supply side. What is the innovative way of raising domestic revenue? From SEFs, from IRA, and other institutions. Let the institutions work.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you shortly to take your thoughts on this. When I started, I talked about the appointment of a new deputy governor, and the current Deputy Division Chief of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Maxwell Opoku-Afari, has been appointed as the first Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Information available to us is that he assumed office today, Monday. The position became vacant after the current Deputy Governor, Millicent, announced his decision to retire. Gentlemen, before you go, some analysts have said that what might work for Dr. Afari is his international exposure, as it's been part of a team that championed recent reforms in the banking industry. Do you know much about him, Ben?
Not really. I think his name came up in the last few weeks when, Dr. Millicent announced his retirement. So we read a little about him. And I think, yes, the background is strong. I think in a good way, it's also good he's worked with the IMF. We know them for their, should I say, financial stability reforms. And if he has worked in any of those divisions, then he should be appropriate. I mean, he should bring in some of the ideas that we always have to run to the IMF for. If we have somebody in there who will actually not just come in from the international front, but actually implement some of the things he's done and he's learned over there, then that would be good for us. So hopefully, I think it's a rather good appointment.
Yes, I don't know him that much again, but I know the governor, Dr. Addison, and he is going to be a deputy to Addison. So I'm sure that he's going to help him carry out the mandate given to them by law. His expertise obviously may not be in that because he might have been vetted, or people may know him before he was given that appointment. So I think that, he has come to meet this economy, the economy that we are talking about. He should bring the expertise on how to maintain our macroeconomic stability, how to reduce borrowing, how to raise domestic revenue, how not to go back to IMF, because every now and then we go back to them, they dictate to us. The point is, don't mess up and go back to them. Spend within your means, and then I think that we will have some good what do you call it?
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. And if the economists and the managers of the economy are listening, you've got to listen to these two gentlemen. I'm sure the economy will be back on track. Edu Sarkodie, thank you very much. He's an economist with the University of Ghana, and of course Ben Amoah-Gyei with First Bank Financial Services, also an analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. We'll go for a short break. When we return, we'll do some analysis on the stock market as well as the commodities market. What's the price of gold, cocoa, oil, and how is it likely to impact on the local economy? We'll be back shortly. All right, so welcome to your award-winning show, your weekly business and economic analysis program, Business Focus, live here on TV3. Well, so the news about the appointment of the first deputy governor of the central bank. So here's the current deputy division chief of the International Monetary Fund. He was Dr. Maxwell Opoku, and he's been appointed as the first deputy governor of the central bank. Information available to us is that he assumed office today. The position became vacant after the current deputy governor, Millicent Nah, announced his decision to resign. So that's his picture on the screens at the moment. The current deputy division chief of the International Monetary Fund has been at that position from September 2014 to present. He holds a doctorate from the University of Nottingham. From December 2012 to August 2014, he served as a senior economist at the International Monetary Fund, working with the Strategy, Policy and Review Development Department, I beg your pardon. He's been with the IMF for over 8 years. Before joining the IMF, he served as the special assistant to the then governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Paul Akwa, from 2006 to 2009. He's also worked in several capacities at the bank. Right, so that's Dr. Maxwell Opoku Afari, the first deputy governor of the central bank. So let's look at the commodities market, find out the price of gold, cocoa and oil, and also the stock market, what's happening there. Justice, research analyst with First Bank. Justice, good evening to you.
Good evening.
First time we're engaging one-on-one, right?
I think so.
I'm shaking.
Oh, really?
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Good to see you. So tell me about the commodities market. What's happening? Let's start off with gold.
Okay, with gold, last week the price dipped marginally. Market players were awaiting news from the US in terms of how many jobs have been created and what the unemployment rate was. And the data came in on Friday and it was good. And what this tends to do is that it gives positive market sentiments about the economy in the US. And you know, when it comes to these things, the US tends to drive the prices. And so the US jobs data was good. It tells you that there are more non-oil farm jobs, and the wage rate is also increasing. Unemployment rate is also coming down. So that sends positive signals, and it strengthens the currency there as well. So when the dollar strengthens, you and I know that it tends to have a negative or an opposite effect on gold prices. So that led to a marginal drop in the price of gold. And for crude oil, what we would...
But hold on, but it's not that bad, is it?
It's currently trading above 2,000, it's around 1,200 and $1,285 dollars per ounce, which it could be better, because last year we realized that it was stable. We've done about 9.3% year-to-date return. And if we look at the forecast, if we are able to, as a country, produce as much as we want to, and we're able to get fairly good enough realized prices for the gold exports we make, it's likely we'll see our export revenue increase.
Yeah, because I know there's been renewed interest by some companies to mine. I know Golden Star Resources, for instance, is looking at some exploitation works in Ghana here, partly because of the seeming hike in gold prices.
So if we are able to foster partnerships, that will ensure that at least we are increasing our output. Even if the price side is not as good as we want it to be, we'll still be shoring up our revenues.
All right, so quickly, let's wrap up with oil and cocoa.
Okay, so for oil, as I alluded to earlier, we saw the price of crude inch above the $50 resistance level that has been established for a while. Currently, it's trading around $52 per barrel, and it's not likely to be sustained there for a long time, because there's obviously supply
increased shale oil production from the United States.
OPEC is supplying more than they promised they would. If you look at Russia, who is not even a member of OPEC, they are also increasing. Exactly. The US is also increasing its oil output. There are more oil rigs on there. And Nigeria, who are not part of the deal OPEC struck to reduce production, they have the liberty to pump. And you know the situation they are in, and they are trying to battle out of recession. So they also have extra motivation to pump more.
Cocoa.
So for cocoa, you realize that the price inched up a bit. The interesting thing with cocoa is that for the first time in a long while, we've formally and informally spoke about the fact that you have two neighboring countries, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and it's like we are price takers and not price makers. If you listen to the budget review statement by the finance minister, he made it very clear that these two countries, that's Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, are cooperating to, at the very least, have a common strategy when it comes to cocoa exports. I mean, it doesn't make sense that we control over 60% of the market and we still take the price from our partners on the international market. And that is a good signal for Ghana. If Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire can come together and form some form of producer organization, it will help our
Just, I'm
fiscal.
afraid we cannot move on to the stock market because I'm just being told signal that our time is up. Well, that's all for our show for this week. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Parkwesi Asare. Hopefully next week we'll come your way with another show. Time now for News 360. Stay tuned.